Welcome to The Dating Lab, the podcast that makes midlife dating simpler, saner, and maybe, hopefully, a little less overwhelming. I'm your host, Alyssa Dineen, and each week we'll break down one real dating challenge that adults 45 plus face today. From confusing apps and unclear profiles to first date nerves and slow fade messages. And you'll walk away with at least one practical tool you can use immediately to date with more confidence, clarity, and momentum. Think of this as your bi-weekly place to experiment, learn something new, and hopefully try something new without the pressure. All right, welcome back everybody to the Dating Lab. Today I'm speaking with Kym Canter, who is a sustainability pioneer in the luxury space with bio-based fur. And she's going to describe what these are to us, so don't worry. And lab-grown diamonds, which I have seen. We were at an event together and she was showing those. We've met over the years because of the fashion world, but we recently saw each other at another fashion event and bonded over our, get this, our love for online dating, which I know all of you are like rolling your eyes. Like, how could you possibly love online dating? It sounds crazy, but she's going to get into that with us too. So I'm super excited to hear from Kym because she met her current partner online and she's going to tell us her story. And I feel like it's just a really encouraging story for all of us to hear. So welcome to the show, Kym. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. We're going to discuss one of my favorite topics.
I know. Okay. So for those of you who, you know, I know you know that I love online dating and I met my partner on there, but I think everybody thinks like, okay, well, that's what you do for work. So of course you have to say that. But there are people that I've met like yourself, like Kym, who do really enjoy it. And I think that, first of all, tell us more about that. Like, how did you start online dating? You know, what brought you to online dating in midlife, and what makes you say that you actually enjoyed it?
So, you know, my story actually started much earlier than midlife. I've been doing this. I was a pioneer in online dating also. And for me, two things you have to realize for me. I'm an entrepreneur, right? Which means that I'm always looking forward to what's next. You know, don't have fear of the future. When I was working at a fashion brand and I had all these young girls, this must have been late 90s, early 2000s, maybe early 2000s, all these young girls working for me. And I would see them on the computer. I would literally like catch them dating, like looking at guys and dating. And I'm trying to think of what those really early sites were, like before Nerve, and there was another one. And anyways, I was single.
MySpace?
Yeah, MySpace.
Back
it was
then?
a lot of MySpace.
Yes, yeah.
And I was single and I was like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, there's this thing called online dating and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like shopping for men. Like basically, like I don't have to sit at a bar and waste 5 hours of my time thinking maybe someone will talk to me, right? Like I can just go online.
And just for context purposes, how old were you when you?
I must have been
were discovered
close to 40 in my late 30s, I think at that.
Okay.
In my
Yeah.
60s
Okay.
Now. So yeah. So I wasn't. Listen, they were in their 20s, right? So this was there weren't that many of us, even in our 30s. Okay. Like, and it was a pretty, you know, out there space then, but I did enter into it with like, wow, you know, I think that's the entrepreneurial bent. Like I have many friends and I'm like, you should go online. And they're like, ooh, cringe, you know, I would never do that. And what does that say about me? And, you know, they're so hung up on all these things that are absolutely meaningless. And I had none of that. So I just think that's sort of important from the get-go. Like I just didn't come to it that way. I came to it like when you learned about online shopping and when you learned about, you know, a cell phone. And, you know, to me, it was just a technical advance that wasn't demeaning in any way. Was, you know, I just totally different mindset.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. So I always went in thinking, wow, I'm going to have fun with something that's the future. And I have to say, like, I had many friends fix me up. I'm sure you've heard this. When a friend fixes you up, they are actually vicariously living through you is what I found. When women fix you up, they are interested in the guy, and then they're in your business from morning, noon, and night, wanting to know everything that's going on, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it happened very few times for me personally, but yeah.
I feel like the friend fix up. And then the other thing is like, you know, trying out people in your friend group, you know, because then when there's a breakup or it goes wrong, there's all this awkwardness, right? So I found as what you would call, I guess, what was conventional dating, right? Which is your friend fixing you up, dating someone in your friend group, to be way more awkward and have potential for disaster than online dating, where you're essentially entering an entire new ecosystem, right? Which to me was really exciting. And I think that whole mindset is missing for many people, especially in middle age, right? Like in middle age, you're very stuck with this idea of, you know, how you met people 20, 30 years ago when you were in college. And it's like, whoa, that world doesn't even exist anymore, you know?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think the first thing is, if you're open-minded, right? And you like new experiences, and those, I think that honestly, that's the key. Like, get rid of the stereotypes, get rid of the baggage, you know, get rid of the fear, you know, think about, you know, the difference between a hobbyist and an entrepreneur, or somebody that just works at a job and an entrepreneur, is an entrepreneur has no fear. You know, you just can't do it if you're going to have fear. You have to be willing to go face everything and essentially walk through it and shrug it off and then do it again the next day. So,
and be okay with failing.
Failing is so part of it. And it's almost like you don't mind the failing because you know it's going to happen and you just can get it out of the way. You know?
Yeah. And I think that's the same with dating, really. It's like failing to me was, I mean, of course there were like the bad fails for sure, but most of them were just signs that it wasn't the right type of person. And then I would make note of that and kind of take that information for the next, you know, person I dated. So I fully embraced the failures. Like, okay, that didn't work because of this, and this.
That's a very mentally healthy approach. I mean, for me, I have to say, like, I was fine with diving in the pool. I very much learned so much about myself that I never knew. Oh my God, this was just like, it was like a free analysis, you know? Like, I learned I'm a people pleaser, like things that you don't really know until you're having these experiences with strangers and you're having multiple ones and you're sort of seeing how you react to these things. And, you know, I realized I am incredibly polite. I am actually a very nice person. Like, I would sit through insufferable dates, not rude, you know? And I would try my little heart out, even if I knew there wasn't a shot in hell I wanted to be with this guy. Like, I just was still going to give it my all. You just never know what someone's going to reveal. You just never know. You know, when you sit down for the first 5 minutes, like the last 50 minutes can be completely different, right? So I always came very open, very trying, very not wanting the other person to have a bad time or be embarrassed or me to be embarrassed. Or once I dated the same guy twice and I didn't even know it, right? I mean, he changed his picture. And
that's really funny. Well, when did you figure it out?
He remembered me and thought that I was just interested for the second time around. Like, I wanted to give it another go. So he said yes, coming with that intention. And he showed up, and I thought he kind of looked familiar, but I didn't get it at all. No memory of it. And then he, of course, luckily said something right away. And I was like, oh my God, he thinks like, no, I am not here to give it a second time around. I just
Okay, so yes, I want to know, did you pretend that you knew?
Totally pretended. Yeah.
That's what I would have done too.
You learn those funny things about yourself, you know? the second huge positive to me, and this is all like aside from the guy, right? This is, I'm entering a whole new world. Wow. You know, a whole new ecosystem of people I can meet. Number two is, wow, I'm going to learn a lot about myself, right? And how I react to people.
Right.
So
yes.
those were two very funny, kind of very big positives. Felt that were for me. And I think the third thing now that I also think is a positive, I told you the positives before the negatives, and we're not even talking about the guy yet, is, you know, so many of us work alone now, work from home, right? After COVID and stuff. And that sort of became the preferred way to be. And I work from home, and some days I can literally not talk to anyone all day, not even realize I haven't spoken to anyone except maybe my doorman, right? And I'm fine with it, but we're also isolated and lonely. I think the online dating really gave you a chance, like a legitimate excuse to go out and just meet people, just talk to people, just grab a coffee with someone,
right?
You know, and I think that's all really, really positive. I met a ton of really interesting men. I guess I've online dated for almost decades, right? But I would find people, like I would hook up with a partner, and then I wouldn't, you know, I would be in a relationship and it could be for a very long period of time. And, you know, and then break up. And then I would be like, oh, I'm going to go back to online dating because it wasn't stigmatized to me. And I didn't have a bad, you know, the relationship just ran its course.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So you've tried probably all of the different iterations of like when it was all online, it was still on your computer that you'd look at everybody.
Yes.
And then when it transferred to like the phone and you'd use the apps and
Oh my God, I remember seeing Tinder for the first time, and I was just like absolutely just like amazed at this. I just thought the swiping was so genius. Like I couldn't even believe, like Bumble. I'm like, why didn't I think of these businesses? Like I was so, the thing that was really surprising to me was that the dating, I somehow was like in the personal bucket of my life, not in the like work where, you know, is there a business here kind of bucket?
Yeah.
You know? And when those businesses, when I first saw them, I was completely jealous that I hadn't started. I thought those businesses, just from a pure business standpoint, genius. Right.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur. So what am I doing that?
I'm going to jump in and have the experience and, you know, see who I meet. And so, yes, I've done so many and so many specialized ones and so many, you know, I would try anything, you know.
So you've tried like Match and Tinder and Bumble and
the Jewish one, the Jewish date.
Right. Yeah. J Swipe, J Date. Yeah.
All those. And I feel like and then like Hinge, and there was some other, that was all like pretty late. And I know now there are a whole bunch of new ones, which also fascinates me. And I have a girlfriend who just suffered a breakup, and I'm like, you got to go online. And she is like, oh my God, I wish you could do it for me. And I'm like, in a way I do too.
I know. Actually, it would be great because you actually like it. So it's so funny because, I mean, I'm sure everybody who's listening to this is like, I can't even imagine enjoying online dating. So it's so refreshing actually to hear someone who is really like had a good experience and you continue to feel like it was positive.
I mean, I had some stink bomb dates. I mean, I don't want anyone to think this was all, I mean, I had some real stink bombs. You know, and then I got into a whole thing with a guy that actually was married, and I ended up writing an article about it for Mary Claire. And like, I've had like some really, and I think they're rare, those experiences. Like, I really do. I don't, you know, it maybe literally happened to me once, you know, of someone not putting themselves forward. And the chances that you're going to, there's a lot of sociopaths, but don't worry about that. Like, that's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's rarer than you think, I think.
Right. Exactly. You know? Exactly. I mean, I actually didn't, when you're just saying somebody who was married, I didn't have any situations like that. It was more just like, you know, some creeps and like some people that were clearly just looking for, you know, to hook up and for sex, and who pretended like they weren't just looking for that, you know, that type of thing. But no one who was like, you know, overtly lying, I guess. Not that I knew anyway, I guess. Nothing that I'd figured out.
I was going to say, and I never felt in physical harm. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think those kind of things are also really important. And I also was going to say, and then we can really get to the meat if you want, but I also am like auntie to a bunch of college age girls in New York City that go to NYU and Columbia because their mothers are girlfriends of mine they live overseas or outside of the city. And so when they sent the daughters, I'm like the den mother to all the daughters. And I've pushed all the daughters to go online dating because, you know, it's just like New York City. You can't meet anyone. You actually do not now meet people in college. I have found out from them in the young 20-something-year-old.
I feel like in a city, it would be harder.
Yes.
I know my daughter is like on a campus. She's at UW. She's in Madison. And that there, I feel like people meet people in that situation, but it's different in a big city like this. Yes. I feel like it would be harder. Yeah. So they tried it?
Yes.
Based on your recommendation?
They really stigmatized. I felt extremely stigmatized, and they somehow felt like what was wrong with them, or they were losers, or there was some negative to having to go online to find someone. And where I would be like, that's crazy, you know, like, I don't even know where you get that idea from. And then the other thing they would do, okay, this is really funny. Like, they wouldn't pay. They would just be like, I'm okay. Like, I'm here. Whatever. I feel bad that I'm online dating and I'm only going to do the free thing. And I'd be like, well, that's really stupid. And they're like, why? And I'm like, wow, if you're going to bother to do it, honey, like, get the creme de la creme of men. Like, you know, if you're paying, and I don't know how these businesses really work. Like, I've never looked into it, but I would think if I'm paying, like, if I get a cable subscription, I want everything. Right?
Yeah. You know I mean? Yeah. No, and it definitely doing the paid versions of it opens up more options
guys,
for you.
Guys. That's how you get the guys that are getting all the hits, not the bottom of the barrel. You know, that algorithm. I want the algorithm in my favor.
The thing is that there's no transparency with these companies, so they don't say that, but the underlying, belief is that if you pay, you get the other people who are paying. You know what I mean?
That's like what what I think. Like you said, it'd be interesting to know if that's actually true. It would behoove them to make it true. I don't think it would hurt them. But so I would always offer for these girls. I'm like, let me pay. Let my gift to you. I am going to put you in the highest category that dating site has available for women. You know?
Okay. So wait, let me back up to, previously when you were in relationships, where were you meeting these other men? Like in your long-term relationships, were you meeting them all online?
In my long-term relationship life, I was in college. So that was, then we met people in college. That was a really long time ago. And then I moved to New York in the early 80s, maybe in 1983. And you're never even going to believe this. So my mother lived in New Haven, Connecticut. I was renting half a living room in Greenwich Village, right in the West Village. And I had dumped all my stuff at my mother's, and I had to go home and, change my clothes out and stuff like that. And we went out to dinner, and I met a girlfriend, local girlfriend, high school girlfriend, for drinks. And we went to some bar in New Haven, met these guys that went to Yale. We had just graduated from art school. They had just graduated from Yale Art School, and they took us to some graduate student bar. And I met a guy who was moving to New York City, and we started dating and spent the next 14 years together.
Wow.
So I actually never dated when I first came to New York City. I just met someone so weirdly right away who was also just having the first moving here experience. And then we actually moved in together and he was really opposite me. He was ended up being a finance guy, and he had just graduated from law school. So, he was working all the time.
Okay.
And we moved in together so we could see each other,
Right.
He was working crazy hours, and, I was living in half the living room. And so, big upgrade for me.
I know.
So,
that sounds like such a New York story. In fact, I remember one of the first apartments I stayed in with a friend who he lived here, and I was wanting to move here. So I was still looking for a place, and I stayed with him, and it was like one of those like East Village walk-ups with the bathtub was in the kitchen.
Oh,
yeah. Remember those? Yeah. It's so odd. I mean, I just miss those days. Like, it's so not like that anymore.
I felt like we had no money, and like when I first
no money, and nobody did.
I smoked cigarettes at the time. It was like, oh, should I eat today? Should I smoke today? Like, we'd go to, neighborhood places. It was just it was like old New York. I think it was a part of New York that really doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I know it's sad, but things change, and we need to embrace that, right? But yeah. But I totally, I miss the bathtub in the kitchen, or, your door for your closet doesn't open fully because there's another door. It's like all the things that didn't work, right?
New Yorkisms. I mean, I have a tiny small kitchen, and when people from LA, because I'm in a pre-war building, and so it's this original configuration of the apartment. So the kitchen's small. And people just crack up, like people that come from especially LA and stuff like that. They're like, oh, New York, and they just roll their eyes.
Right.
But that's its charm.
I know. Exactly. Okay. So then you were in that relationship until your mid to late 30s. Is that right?
Yes. I was in that relationship. And then I got out of that relationship, of course, fell right into another relationship, as one does do on the rebound. Then was finally single again and saw the girls on MySpace. And then, and so then it was like, damn. But I think for older people, I think it was Nerve. I think was dated. Yeah. And I just can't remember if there was something else. I think then I started met guys on Nerve, and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then from Nerve, then what app did you go from there later?
Tinder. Where do you go from Nerve?
Yeah.
Someone's watching this that knows Nerve, they would really laugh at that joke, because Nerve was very sexy. It was much more I guess how that field thing is now. It was at the moment kind of not dicey, but it was a little sexy. It was a little controversial.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
I definitely remember that back in the day. And so then I think I was pretty firmly on Tinder for a really, really long time. There weren't really many alternatives, right? I mean, I can't think of it.
Did you ever go on Match? Did you ever try Match?
Oh, yeah, I went on Match. No, you're right. I went on Match. I was probably on Match before Tinder. I'm sure that I went. Now you're right. I did. And I did the Jewish one because someone told me I should do the Jewish one. So I did the Jewish one. So yeah, I did the J-Date and Match before going on Tinder. You're absolutely right. And didn't have any success on either of those.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I mean, maybe had a couple date things, but nothing long, nothing in the years. I have no memory of whoever that guy. I mean,
Yeah, right. And then so when you went on Tinder, so that's where I met my partner, on Tinder. So we've been together for 9 years now, but I'm biased towards Tinder. I loved it because I felt like it was, I met a lot of people from that app. It was a lot of men use Tinder, so.
But I met so many interesting men. I met, who I won't reveal because I don't think they would want me to reveal them, but I met a famous actor. I met, who were legitimately on there to meet someone. I met billionaires. I met, people you wouldn't think were on there, well-known artists. I met a lot of regular people too, but I just, it was a really big ecosystem. Like I was very surprised at the high caliber, if you know what to look for, but that's like a whole other podcast, like how to go on these things. It's like reading a real estate ad. Do you know what I mean? Like there's definitely an art to doing it and reading between the lines. And, I always knew I was a quirky person. Like I'm a pretty quirky person. I picked a more alternative lifestyle, I would say. Like, I'm not as like, I didn't really care if I had children. I wasn't so bothered to be married. I just it didn't mean that much to me and personally. So I knew that I wasn't looking for, most people were not going to appeal to me. Let me put it that way.
Right.
Like a sort of very traditional person I wouldn't appeal to them and they wouldn't appeal to me. So, and I think if you're a little bit other, it's maybe harder and easier at the same time because it's just a smaller subset that you're looking for. So I think once you kind of get hip to like, okay, have a sense of who's there and how to read those profiles, you can not waste so much time, because that's the thing. You go out with someone, like every human's worth something. Do you know what I mean? That's how I used to look at it, right? Like everybody's worth a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. I mean, some people weren't, whatever, and you can always cut it short. But, after a while, you go on so many of those kind of dud dates, it's discouraging and it's time. You feel like you wasted your time. And so.
Yeah. I think there is a point where you do start to feel like your energy is being sucked away from, certain people and trying to get more choosy in who you spend your time with. But I like yourself, I enjoyed meeting with new people. I was more open to that. I think that once you've been I think there's different personality types that it's exhausting, more exhausting than maybe it would be for you and I. But actually, and on that note, I want to know, like, what did you learn from men that you didn't choose to date? What do you feel like that looked like?
Well, I would have to say, okay, to be really transparent, I am a little bit of, I think, I tended to want the guys that didn't want me. And this is like, I feel like a very familiar trap for many people, right?
Totally.
You always you just want to be in the club that won't have you, And so I spent a lot of time trying to get into the club that didn't want me, wasting endless amounts of time because I'm not a girl that gives up easy and I like to win. So there were just years wasted on this, right? And so I think I learned, so it's kind of the opposite of what you asked me, right? It wasn't like there were so many guys wanting to be with me and I was like, no, right? It was like, I only was obsessed with everyone that didn't really want me, and trying to get them to want me.
Right. Well, which I think is, definitely, like you said, I mean, that's like an age-old problem with a lot of women, mostly. I feel like, especially like from our generation, I think it was a real issue. You went for the guys who were pushing you away.
Yes. Yeah. Or, weren't interested enough. Like now I would never do that. This is what age is. It's like now if someone didn't call me, like I would just move on. Like actions speak louder than words. Like whereas then I would come up with all kinds of scenarios to get back in touch. You know what I mean? Like it just like, let it die, let it die. Like,
interesting.
And I think now I would never do half of the things I did then, and the amount of man hours that went into, I could have had 5 other businesses figuring out like, okay, how can I get him? How can I become important? Dissecting conversations. What did that really mean? What did he really mean? It's like, no, like if you have to work that hard, there's
totally.
like run.
Yeah. And now, now of course, all the messaging in the relationship space is, if somebody doesn't want you, why would you want them?
Right.
Why are you trying to force someone to try to like you, basically?
And also,
but I did the same thing. I think we all did.
And also, like, the forms of communication are really tricky. Like, you don't know when you're, this one always killed me. Like, you don't know when you're texting. Like, there you are, and you're so focused on the guy in our case, right? And like, okay, I'm going to text him, and you'd get all nervous. And what am I going to say in the text? And, you'd spend like an hour composing a 4-word text. It's just nuts, right? And then you'd send the text, and you wouldn't hear anything. And you'd be like crazy checking your phone every 5 minutes. And, the reality is you don't know. That guy could have been in a meeting. He could be on an airplane. He could be, like crazy. Once a guy didn't call me for like, I don't know, we'd had a great date for like 2 weeks or something. And I was like coming up with scenarios like maybe he had a heart attack, because now we're in old life. And in fact, he had a heart attack. But
actually,
yeah, he actually had. He still didn't want to date me. He did recover and get back in touch, but then his mind was elsewhere. But yeah, it's
right. Oh my God, that's actually really funny.
So many traps that are just traps of time wasting. Because I do believe when it's the right thing, it's just really easy.
Yeah, exactly. So that brings us to your current relationship. So how did you guys meet? Which app? What did that look like?
we met. So we were both on both apps, but I have his Bumble picture. So I saved it. So I'm going to go with maybe it was Bumble. We actually don't remember. It was quite a while ago.
It was either Bumble or what would be the other one?
Yeah, it was Tinder, either Bumble or Tinder. But I think because I saved his photo from Bumble, maybe it was Bumble. And we met. I was on the rebound from another online guy who disappeared. Who was like suddenly ghosting me after like 2 great dates, back on the horse, just there, end up on a date with George, who I thought was really hot. I thought we had a lot in common. I thought he was a really hot guy. I was like, I don't know, arty guy. Do I want an arty guy? It was a little bit like, he was handsome, smart. Like I was like, oh, this is a good date, and then he gave me a kiss, and I felt goodbye at the end of the date in like just right in front of my building. And I literally felt like an electric shock, like I just was like, whoa, he's a really good kisser. Like I just was like, wow, okay, definitely going out with him again. Well, so it was very, yeah, it was attraction, I guess, but he was super smart and we had a lot in common. Like he had gone, where we'd gone to school, he was a musician. He'd been a musician. Now he's a music critic. So, we had a lot in common. And then he asked me out. He waited, I don't know, a week or something like that. And then he asked me out and we went out for drinks and oysters. And evidently I turned to him after when I was on my second drink or something and said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to finish this drink. And then I want to go to my house and make out. I just basically was like, this is how, because I guess I was sitting there and thinking like, how much more can I drink? How many more oysters can I have? So I just was like, this is honestly what I want to happen in this date. And he was like, wow, that sounds really great to me.
That's so great. Oh my God. I love that you were so direct. Okay. And then and how long have you guys been together?
And so then we were together, but honestly, I was still a little bit on the rebound for the other guy and didn't want to completely settle down. And so kept it at kind of like a hooking up thing. And then he came, so that went on for, I don't know, maybe like a year. And then I didn't even know that he was also dating another woman, but because I just had with also my attention elsewhere. And he came to me and said, I've kind of been dating this other woman, going on dates with this other woman, and she wants a boyfriend, and I really like having a girlfriend, and I'd like you to be my girlfriend, but I don't think you want to be my girlfriend. And if that's the case, then I think I'm going to check out what's going on with this other woman. And I was like, you should do that. Like, I was so crazy. Like,
oh my God.
You should do that. I have a startup business. Like, I'm so busy. I don't want to be in a relationship right now. Like, that seems just really like, no, you go do that. So then we had a break, and he called me, and I was desperate for someone to go to a fashion party with me. I just didn't want to go alone, and I was like, he just was like, what are you doing? I'm going to be near you. And I'm like, I'm going to go to this party. Why don't you come with me? And I took him to the party, and it was very, very nice to see him. And he looked great and all that. And then I said, would you want to grab dinner? And I said, why don't I take you to dinner for coming to this party with me, right? And I thought we were there like to hook up, and that's why he'd called me. And so I turned to him during the dinner, and I'm like, so like, when did you guys break up? Like, what caused the breakup? And he like turned to me and he said, why do you think that we've broken up? And I said, I just, why would you call me? Like, aren't we like going to go hook up? Like, kind of thing. And he was like, no, we're not going to go hook up. And I called you because I missed you and just wondered how you were. Yeah, and you invited me to a party, so.
That's really funny.
So I was like, God, guys must feel like this all the time. They take the girl out, spend all this money thinking they're going to, she's going to put out. And then she's like, sorry, I'm seeing someone, it was complete role reversal. And then they did break up. And I, broke up with the guy I'd been seeing and who actually lived on another coast. And COVID happened. And then, of course, coming out of COVID, and we talked all through COVID, but he was with his daughter, he has a daughter, and he was in a different pod than I was in Brooklyn, and I was in a Manhattan pod. So it wasn't until things cleared up, and then we kind of would meet up outside and sit in the park and stuff like that. And I knew, okay, if he comes to your house, you're done. Like, and one day the weather was just too cold, and I said, well, this is so stupid. We're freezing on a park bench. Let's just go to my house. And then the rest is kind of history,
Okay. So that was in the middle of
that was maybe
time.
How many years ago? That must have been in 21 or 22. When was COVID?
Okay.
Right?
20.
So we must have gotten back together in 21 or 20. I think 21 maybe. So we've been together since then.
Okay. So so like 5 years or so. Interesting. That is definitely like an interesting, course of it. Like, just the course of that relationship was very, like, not so linear. It wasn't like
not linear at all. And then it got even weirder. If you really want to know the truth, it gets even weirder because then we're hooking up and dating after COVID, right? And I got an opportunity to sublet my apartment and move to, someone gave me their loft. They weren't living there. They were going to Europe, and it was a big loft on Bond Street. And they said, hey, why don't you sublet your apartment? Just go live in my loft on Bond Street. And I had just closed a business. So that was going to be like, I could live almost rent free for, whatever. And I was like, oh God, I'm really attached to my home. And I was very freaked out about a new environment. And it's weird what freaks you out. And one girlfriend of mine said, oh my God, why don't you take George to that big loft? Take George there. Then you'll be focused on romance and living with this guy, not that you're living in a new home. And I thought, well, that's a really good idea. So then we went from we did everything in the wrong reverse. So then I, basically said to George, hey, you want to move to this big loft with me, and he did. So, then we lived together. Now we don't live together. We've just done everything in the weirdest order.
That's really funny. Okay. So how long did you guys live together?
Year and a half, almost 2 years in the big loft.
Okay. And do you miss living together?
We
or not
do
really?
A little bit. We actually do a little bit, and we've been talking about doing it again. It's just also such a New York story. Like, he's in Brooklyn, I'm here. he's near his daughter. I love my neighborhood. I mean, it's like all that stupid, very New York centric, the daughter's going to go to college in 2 years. I mean, it's like, what's the rush? It's just a lot of that. It's a lot of just,
yeah. Well, and also, and I like that you brought that up actually, because it illustrates like how different scenarios can work in a relationship. And I think, a lot of the clients I work with are, in our age group or older. And it's like, it doesn't have to be a traditional, like, you meet, you date, you move in together, then you get married, then you happily ever after type thing. It can be whatever you want it to be. In fact, I have a client that her and her partner are married, but they don't live together.
Yeah, no, I'm very big.
They have separate apartments.
I actually suggested that we have 2 apartments, or I was a little bit fine with that because I love living alone. There are so many things about living alone that I really love. And I didn't, we've talked about that too, all kinds of setups you can have, but it's interesting that we have the trial run of living together and it went really well, but there's also something nice now, every night is date night that we see each other, right? Like, so that to me is also very special. And that 100% goes away when you live together. It just does, other things become important and annoying. Definitely. And, this sort of, now it's like every time we see each other, it's very special. So it's a give and take, we talk about both, like it's super fun when we're just sitting around watching a movie and you kind of want like to do that more often than certain times you wish, the person was there all the time. And so, that's a give and take. So, we're just kind of like in the middle of all of that.
Yeah. No, but I think, it's like, but you're still wanting to be together. It just doesn't have to be so like black and white or so traditional or, it doesn't have to be anything. It just can be whatever what works for you guys.
Right. Exactly what works for us. And, and we also talk about getting married sometimes. That's, we've talked about that. And
how do you feel about that? Because you previously didn't really want that.
Yeah. I think, okay. So the thing late in life, I think it's good to have a medical advocate. This probably sounds so cold.
No, oh my God. I think it's great you're talking about it.
The coldest person on the planet. But so obviously like the kids thing is over, right? And I don't have any issue living alone and I have a really full and busy life. And so what are the pluses? I think if I was closer to the idea of retirement, maybe I would be, I think it's maybe nice to have a partner then, probably very nice to have a partner then, probably very nice to have someone that can advocate for you medically, like a team member. So I think marriage is really a plus for those things at the end of life, right? Like, you have rights that you wouldn't have. If you're going to be in the relationship, definitely married, you're going to get a lot more rights, I think, which are going that's just the reality of it. So that could for sure be a reason to do it.
Yeah.
Having the party, I think, and the outfit and everything also appealing, the actual event is appealing.
It's funny because you would think that part of it would be appealing to me too, but I have zero desire to have a wedding. Like that sounds very stressful and like a lot of work to me. So I don't know if I would ever do that.
I go in and out of thinking about it. I don't know, like I went to a friend's wedding and they got married because of visa. They're really a couple, but long story, were together for 10 years, didn't care about getting married and had to for sort of visa reasons of where they were living. And actually had a wedding. She was exactly like you. And it was perfectly adult and wonderful and not traditional. And in the Chelsea Town Hall, it was in London and it was super fun. And I kind of came back from that thinking like, oh yeah, the adult wedding. There's like a whole new way to do a wedding. And yeah, the wedding can be really fun. So I was a lot more pro since that experience.
Yeah.
And, other than like, sometimes I feel silly saying the word boyfriend. I mean, that's like dumb things bother me, but nothing really real or,
we talked about that.
Like, yeah.
We talked about that at the party that we saw each other at, because I was like, we both say partner. I said partner, I think. And you were like, I never know what to say because boyfriend sounds so weird, but then partner sounds weird. It's like none of it really works.
Yes.
It's like I wish there was we need to come up with a new term for it.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And we call each other boyfriend and girlfriend all the time as a joke. And I think because I was so not wanting, at one point not wanting to be the girlfriend, but now I'm the girlfriend and I want to be fully the girlfriend. So it's become like an inside joke between us. And
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, hey, boyfriend, I mean, we overuse the word. Okay?
That's really funny. Well, I love it. Thanks so much for sharing your story. I think it's really, I don't know, I feel like it's uplifting for people to hear, all the different types of relationships and different ways that you can get there, the way that you arrived at this relationship, and that you have had a lot of experience online dating, and yet you still enjoy it, or you still enjoyed it, So I think that's so, I don't know. I just think it's uplifting to hear your story.
Oh, thank you. I wish when I see people, even my friends that are just, suddenly single, a much older time in their life, and even the 20-year-old college girls, I just am so disappointed in the fact that they see it as a negative. I actually don't understand the culture.
A lot of people do.
Why culturally this is still considered, or this was ever considered, a negative. That's some very old moray or something like in the
world. Well, I think now
today.
It's evolved now where it's not, I mean, back even when I started online dating, it was still you didn't totally say that, you could, but it was still.
Yeah. You kept it under wraps.
It was coming into, where it was more normalized. But now I feel like everybody online dates, literally everybody who's single online dates. And so it's not like it's a taboo topic. It's just that it's become so heavy as a topic. It's become so negative, and everything about online dating has become so negative. And I get that there's a lot of frustration, and it's tedious at best, and really, really disheartening. And I don't know. I mean, I've talked to women who are just I hate it. I can't do it again. I literally hate it. So I think that it has become just a heavy topic where people they don't see any positive about it.
I feel like, honestly, for me, I think it's my profession. I think if I wasn't an entrepreneur, what do you do as an entrepreneur? You basically go out and try to get money and try to talk people into, thinking what you're doing is a thing. And 9 out of 10 of those meetings are duds and a waste of time. And you're, I don't know. I just felt like I had this understanding that almost I'm never going to get to success until I pass through those experiences. That's been my experience of getting the golden ticket, right? Launching a successful business. You have to go through this sort of courtship stage and it doesn't, it can be with an investor, it can be with someone on dating. But it's the same tedium. It's exactly like dating. It is so much like dating. You're just chasing people, trying to get them to pay attention to you, trying to get them to meet up with you. It's hot one day, it's cold the next day. It's, you think it's going to be great. It sucks. You think it's going to suck. It's great. It's essentially the same experience. And I think that, I'm just really kind of used to it, and can see that there is a silver lining at the end. And I think that helped me, help my understanding of it. And, people need to be more patient and get that, lean into it, I think, and lean into the fact that you're going to learn something every time you go on one of those dates, and be more focused on that than the negative. I mean, you just learn a lot about the world. It's funny. I'll admit this, and I know we have to go, but I'll admit this other totally funny thing is that now that I don't date, so every day, my day, when I was an online dater, I would set aside from maybe 5 to 7, sometime within that time, like between early end of my work day and early evening. And that was the time I would date. That would be the time I would go online. And I would basically shop for men, And so when I first stopped doing it, I was like, well, what am I going to do now between 5 and 7, And like, God forbid I should read a book or something, And so then I turned to actual shopping, and I was like, this is really bad. Okay. And then someone turned me on to TikTok. I saw these young girls on TikTok, and now I have traded my online dating habit for essentially TikTok. So I don't, which is probably worse, but equally interesting and informative, and I'm learning a lot about the world.
Yeah. I mean, TikTok is definitely a window into what is happening in pop culture and everything. Yeah. Yes, actually, just like dating. Well, thanks so much. And actually, so before we go, I just want people to hear a bit about what you do. And because I think I'm so interested in what you do. And I think just a brief synopsis of your businesses and also how people could look at your products or how they can see what you do.
Happy to do that. So the first business I have came out of, is a fashion business essentially. And had been creative director of a fashion brand for many years that was known for making the finest fur in the world. And I had an epiphany that I wasn't going to wear fur. And when I had that epiphany, I realized that these fur coats were, not doing me any good. And I sold 26 of my own fur coats and started a faux fur brand. And when I looked at the composition of the materials, the faux fur was all filled with petroleum and polyester and really, really terrible ingredients. I was like, oh my God, this is not a win. Right? I don't want to wear clothes made out of this stuff. So I started an innovation pillar to try to make a bio-based version of faux fur. And I inevitably closed the brand side of the business, kept the innovation pillar, renamed it BioFur. You can find it at biofurworld.com. And we just launched, actually earlier this year, a 100% bio-based, 100% compostable faux fur textiles and Sherpa textiles that shed no microplastics when you wash them in a machine, are as soft, durable, warm, fuzzy, comfortable, and luxe as real fur. And also they're USDA certified. So that is one business. And during the time that we were developing the materials, because innovation takes quite a long time, and my science team was in the Netherlands, and I am obviously not a scientist. So I was sort of like, well, what am I going to do every day, right? Until I have something to market and sell. So I wanted to stay in the sustainability space, and I became, luxury and reframing the luxury story for the next generation is kind of my jam. And so I got interested in lab-grown diamonds, and I launched a lab-grown diamond brand called The Invisibles. You can find it at theinvisiblejewel.com. And so now
they're so cool. You had one on the night I saw you.
Yes. Our hero product is a floating diamond, floating ethical lab-grown diamond. And just in case anyone's wondering, the lab I work with, it's solar powered and it's approved. So, which is a very big approval in the sustainable world about working conditions and everything. And so
that's so cool. You really are entrepreneur at your core.
At my core, yes. And so that is keeping me very, very busy. And
I'm sure.
It's biofurworld.com.
Biofurworld.com.
And The Invisible Jewels is the Instagram handle and also the .com.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Great. Amazing. Well, thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. Yeah, this is really fun. I love to hear your story. Well, I hope to see you soon.
Yes. Okay. Hope so.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Dating Lab. If today's episode gave you something to think about, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And if you want more dating guidance, you can find me on Instagram or at stylemyprofile.nyc.com. Until next time, remember, dating is a process, not a verdict. You're doing better than you think.